because I get to be with, and you get to be with, someone who people like me usually have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get this kind of amazing information. Please meet my friend and colleague and I said world-class.
Wait. And drinking buddy.
And drinking buddy, who she's going to pour me a glass. Wait,
okay. Get your glass over here.
Yeah.
Pour you. Let's pour you. Pour. All right. Get that glass there. Very good. Now,
thank you. That was so nice. Cheers. Cheers.
Oh, well, that sounded like a total fucking clunk. We're off on a good race. Cheers to you. To everybody or anybody here.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
I know Steve Dale's out there. So here's to Steve, and here's to my Steve Dale and my great friend and professional jazz singer, Michelle Lordy. Go look her up and let your ears just do some dazzling while you're in lockdown.
Yum.
So I'm going to just tell them who you are for the people who don't know.
Yeah.
Margie Scherk is a diplomat of AVP. Do you want to tell them what that is? It's a lot of work.
Because you can't remember what the letters stand for, right? American Board of Veterinary Practitioners.
And you are the editor of the Journal of Feline Internal Medicine and Surgery.
Co-editor, yeah.
Co-editor. And you have been a president of the American Association of Feline Practitioners, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, you kind of are everything, which is why
I'm old.
You're also the reason why I changed my entire life, because before Dr. Margie Scherk was my friend, I was her groupie. Mm-hmm. And I was at a 3-day lecture series on feline internal medicine. And basically every topic that we touched on for the 3 days came back to behavior in one way or another, and specifically feeding behavior. And I walked out of there and I was like, someone's got to fix this. And so I decided to do it, and it's all your fault.
No, girl.
So now that we're all in lockdown, Margie and I were talking about that we're kind of like the indoor cats now.
Yeah. So yeah, when we were talking, and Liz asked me if I wanted to do something like this, and I was just waiting for her to ask me. I said, what I was thinking about is because I just got back from Germany on the 14th, 13th, something like that. So in Canada, that means even back then you had to go into quarantine self-isolation for 2 weeks. So I've been in self-isolation for 2 weeks, and generally I work from home, so it's not too bad for me. But still, there's like, I can't go outside, I can't go to the gym, I can't work out, I can't, yes, I can do this stuff inside, but who does? And all these sorts of things. And I thought, wow, if I'm feeling pent up and unable to perform my normal behaviors, gosh, doesn't that sound like cats who are, who may not be able to perform their normal behaviors because they are strictly indoors?
And I think we can up the ante even more, because we have designed our houses, like my house. We were talking earlier today and you remarked, like, are you laying down? I was like, yes, as a matter of fact, I am. Because I like to work in my little TV room, lying in repose on my chaise. And I have my LaCroix next to me and CNN in the background, and I can go on Facebook and I can do all the things that I need to do, even though I'm in lockdown. But I set up this whole house the way I like it. I'm super lucky. We'll take it a step further with cats. So not only are they not in their normal space to have the ability to perform their natural behaviors, but our houses are set up for people, not cats. And there's some really big problems with that.
Yeah, there's some real problems with that. And also what we end up doing too is then saying, well, certainly for those of us who are veterinarians, we see somebody who is broken or hurt, and we need to bring them home. So we keep bringing home all of these hurt critters to help them. And this is a really good thing and kind and all this kind of stuff, except it's not. for the other cats. And the analogy I like to make there is if the government brings along somebody to your, comes up to your door and knocks on the door and says, this is pre-pandemic, somebody comes up to the door and says, hey, we know that you've got an extra room and you're doing really well. And so here's a person who needs some help, and they've just arrived from fill in the blank country or situation or whatever, and we'd like you to take care of them. And so they leave them at the door, and you go, oh, okay, well, please come in. How you try to make some small talk, find out a little bit about them, show them their room, show them where the fridge is, all this kind of stuff. And for the first few days, it's kind of interesting. Yes, you're getting to know each other. And then after that, it's kind of like, get out of my space. And this is what we do to our cats. And cats aren't social in the same ways that we are. So it's really, cats are very, very different than we are. And we're just imposing our stuff on them.
And I think that's so hard for us to understand, to get outside of the human experience and think about what it's like for cats. And that's why I'm just going to take myself out of the.
Well, that didn't work. Come back. We can't hear you.
It's really about the same with us having to live in a bird's nest is not that different than a cat having to live with us. So you made this awesome slide deck that I want to go through, and I'm going to try to do that technologically. Good at a lot of things, but not all things. And my friend, Dr. Hillary Israel, is here tonight, and she is actually good at all things. And Hillary, you have to help me next time. I should have gotten you on the phone. But so I don't. Is there a slide in there about cat social structure?
No slides yet whatsoever.
Oh yeah, no, but I meant in general. Is there a slide in there about cat social?
No. I was just starting with.
Well, if there's not a slide in there, let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Because people live in groups. It's very normal for us to have friends and roommates, eat together, sleep together, live in the same house. The eating together is one I think is so interesting because for human beings, it's so important. When I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, one of the punishments for children that misbehaved was you're going to have to go to your room and eat dinner by yourself. That's a punishment. Where cat social structure is entirely different. So talk to us about a little bit about how cats live with each other and eat and just their basic living structure.
Well, cats in general, they because the saying "you are what you eat," that is so incredibly true with cats because cats eat small birds, not big birds, small birds and mice. And if you eat a small bird or a mouse, you can't really bring it back and make Thanksgiving dinner and serve a bunch of other cats with it. It's you. And not only that, it's something that you have to hunt alone because if there's other cats with you and anybody makes a sudden movement, then that bird will fly away or the mouse will run away. So it has to really be a one-on-one kind of thing. Additionally, because the mouse or bird only provides about they need about 8 or 10 of these a day to survive. It means that they have to hunt very frequently because they don't score every single time they hunt. So they got.
I think that fact is mind-boggling to most people. When I'm out in the world talking about cats all the time with just regular non-veterinary people, because we're not very regular, our veterinary selves. But when I say, tell me how many mice one cat eats in one day, they'll say 1 or 2 because they're such incredible hunters and solitary, right? So they don't hunt in front of us. Most of us in an entire lifetime, particularly I was a horse person, as were you. So as was Hillary. So we maybe have seen cats sitting there waiting and stalking, but for the most part, or you've seen a cat with a mouse in its mouth, or maybe playing with a partially alive mouse a couple of times in your entire life. But this is a very private behavior. And that's another thing that I think is really hard for people. If we don't see it, it doesn't exist. Kind of like when I do housework and my husband doesn't see it. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. So that fact that it's 8 to 10 in one day is amazing, right? I mean, what other species has to do that? Not many.
They work so, so hard. And additionally, they when they're working, you know, a lot of it's at dawn and at dusk. So not when we are really seeing it. And that's of course why they like to pounce and play with you in the early morning and while you're still trying to get some sleep in it, and while you're trying to fall asleep or just after you've fallen asleep, because that's when they're going to get their prey. But once they've done that, so they hunt alone, and then they eat alone because there's nothing that they're not going to share. So that's very, very different than in the human world. And this also leads to the importance of having, when you think about the resources that cats need in their homes, in our homes, it's not just a food and water bowl side by side and a litter box somewhere, but they need multiple feeding stations because they're not always getting a mouse in the same place. They need multiple water bowls, they need multiple litter boxes, and they need to be in different places.
So let's get to your slides if I can do this. It might not be pretty. Hang on a sec. If we weren't in social distancing, I would.
Yes. Yeah, so and on advance on that one, talk about how we need to optimize the indoor environment for cats and looking at the role of stress in feline sickness. So when we're talking, we're just talk through these slides and show them that work better. Really trying to help so okay, well, then what I next want to talk about was, what is stress, and that stress, that this is what we're going through, self-isolation or stress because we don't know what's happening in the future, and all of our goals are turned upside down. And what is stress? Stress is a condition in which and control are compromised. So, and additionally, demand for your ability to cope exceeds the natural.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, I'm coming back because you were very garbled there.
Oh, that's not good.
But it's my technology shortcomings again. So I'm gonna have to leave the slides like that, I think. And we're
ditch the slides. Just ditch the slides.
Okay.
That's okay. Just ditch the slides. I'll just talk through them. I have them open here as well. So when you're unable to, stress, which we're all undergoing, is a condition in which predictability and control are compromised, and we feel like we're out of life is just, we have no control. And the same thing happens, for cats, and stress makes us sick, as we know. So stressors are various stimuli that induce this, and these stress response components are physical, they're also behavioral or social, and they're also psychological. And we're seeing this a lot right now, people getting really anxious, but stress is also very individual, and the response depends on the type of stress, what you anticipate, your perceptions, the quality and intensity of the stress, and the frequency of the stress as well. But bottom line is it's loss of control and unpredictability, and cats really, really hate that.
So Margie, can you stop there a little bit and explain that for cats, even maybe more pronounced than other species, or maybe it's because they're so stressed in our environments, but that those stresses can actually become significant physical illnesses?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, what we know with cats is that from stress, that they can develop. It's really quite interesting. Not only can they develop things like inflammatory bowel disease or urinary tract diseases, either crystals, stones, or even idiopathic cystitis, like interstitial cystitis in people. Hyperthyroidism, because they're bored, they're going to eat more and they're less active. They're going to be, if they're indoors, they're going to become overweight. Then also, if they become overweight and are predisposed to diabetes, I mean, there are just all kinds of things that can, like true illnesses that can occur. But additionally, because stress is associated with hormone release and and causes inflammation and activates the immune response in initially good ways, but over time bad ways, and causes changes in mood and depression. And if there's any pain that you have, then you develop pathologic or neuropathic pain. There's, in addition to that, also there are what are called sickness behaviors, what Dr. Tony Buffington talks about, and other and people on the human side, in human medicine, about sickness behaviors where in the past it used to be dismissed as being all in your head, except it's not, because you can actually in cats with sickness behaviors, they're actually physically healthy, but they may be vomiting, have diarrhea, eat less or stop eating altogether. They may actually have fever, decreased activity, sleep more, decreased grooming, increased grooming, and therefore, more hairballs, be lethargic, have decreased desire to interact. All of those things can occur in someone who is perfectly healthy physically because of stress or distress.
And I think that is really important for people to understand, and so shocking. When we think about the wellness of our cats, how they are stressed or thriving in their environments actually becomes physical sickness. Like, that's shocking. It's really shocking. And so when we set up our indoor environment thinking we're doing everything, like we set it up for humans. Oh, it's my baby. We'll set up, this is the bed and they get to sleep with me. All 19 of them get to sleep with me, and I feed them, in the kitchen from this giant bowl every day. And I'm doing everything right for them.
Right.
You're doing it right.
And I've gotten 16 million toys and all this sort of stuff. And cats want to have a sense of control. And because they have evolved to hunt alone and eat alone, it also means that, and because of what they have to defend their territory, which comprises their resources. And in so doing, they have to make sure that they avoid being harmed. And so they have all of these massively expressive body language and facial expression in order to, they're really, really good at saying, stay away. And they look really scary, and we call that aggressive, when in fact it's not aggressive, it's self-defensive behavior. And they have to do that because if they get into a fight, then they become injured, then then there's nobody to take care of them. And so when we talk about they're going away, they take themselves away to die. In fact, they're taking themselves away to heal when they no longer can fend for themselves. And so it's really, really problematic. But like you say, we're actually looking at cats through the wrong prism. And we have to go back to who and what is a cat, and what are normal feline behaviors, and how do we support those within the environment that we are offering them. And
so where do we start with that? What's your best jumping off point to explain what's a cat?
Well, I think, again, they're a solitary survivor who can live with others, but they don't have to. And if they live with others, they have to be able to get away. They have to be able to, their personal space, for instance, it's actually perfect. We're being told 6 feet or 2 meters, and that exactly is a cat's personal space. For us, that's really, really far away. For them, that's ideal.
And one of the things that I love that you just brought up also as it pertains to the space is how cats will show this, we call it distancing, this big behavior to make you go away. But what I think, the more I'm learning about cats all the time, I feel like there's always something, and I'm like obsessed, but there's always something that I'm learning. and learning about their nonverbal communication through distance, through scent, through leaving other kinds of marking like urine or scratching, or through subtle body postures and body language signals that in the human world, we don't really get it, but they have told us by the time, if let's say it's to us, by the time they're making that big behavior, they've tried to tell us they don't like that thing, whatever it is, in many, many, many ways. It's sort of like if you have a toddler going, mom, 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 mom. And then if you don't respond, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We just don't read those little subtle behaviors of catness because they're just not like a dog, where a dog will be really demonstrative. They really show you what they're thinking, and cats just aren't like that.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting that there was a group out of the United Kingdom that was wanting to have people respond to a survey as to what they felt particular signs meant that a cat was showing, body postures and stuff. And it was remarkable how the split between people who got it and people who didn't, and who are able to see the distress in a cat, or just from the body posture, from where the ears are, the whiskers. We now have the facial grimace scale, which is has been validated for identifying pain. There are so many different scales and things now, many which aren't validated, but some which are, to identify the subtle signs of pain in cats. Cats cannot admit to being sick. Cats cannot admit to hurting. And that is key, really, really important. So you have to know what's normal for your cat. You have to be able to see your cat when the kid is acting normally and doing whatever, and not just when they're tearing your tablecloth down because you didn't listen to the mom.
Yeah, and I think that's really critical. They're not going to tell us what they need. They're just not. So by the time that they're telling us what they need,
it's been a while.
It's desperate.
It's been a while. And this is why a lot of times, when I was in practice, I'd see a cat who had, whether the person would be bringing, their person would be bringing their kitty in, and because they were concerned because, 2 days ago, the kitty sort of wasn't eating quite as much as normal. And then yesterday they also weren't as energetic. And then today they didn't eat at all. And then I'd tell them that their cat had lost, let's say, half a pound, which would translate into being about 10% of the cat's body weight, 10% of the cat's body weight. And I convert that to me, and that'd be something like, 14 pounds. And it's like, well, wait, you can't lose 14 pounds in 3 days. What are you talking about? No, you're right. Your kitty's been sick for longer. So it's really, really good you've brought them in, because they hide their illness. So it's a really good thing you didn't wait longer. And thank you for bringing them in.
Yeah, I thank Facebook. A Facebook friend of mine showed a video of her cat. She said, he always does this thing where he kneads on me in bed, but now he's kneading on me and he's doing this weird thing where he's like shaking his tail and kind of tucking his hind end under. And she showed him, and like, this is so funny. What's he doing? And I wrote right back and I was like, I think he's getting blocked. I think that you need to go to the vet. And it turned out that's exactly what was happening. Now, unfortunately, the vet center didn't take any samples and sent her home with antibiotics. So we'll get into that later. But we would have treated that differently. We would have treated that differently. But noticing those subtle changes are everything.
Yes. And there's a really good website that talks about the subtle signs of sickness, and that's haveweseenyyourcatlately.com.
Ooh, I don't know that
a lot of really good information, but it's haveweseenyyourcatlately.com, and on that they have getting your cat to the vet, which is a really, really important topic, and Steve's talked about that a whole bunch as well, and then also the subtle signs of sickness and what those are. And your cat's always trying to tell you something whenever they do anything unusual or abnormal, because otherwise they will just pretend everything is fine. Nope, it's fine. I'm fine.
And really, let's go back to that. It's because Mother Nature tells them, if I show you anything that's wrong with me, I'm probably going to die.
Yep.
So
we are not good at asking for help.
Yeah, which some of us out there can relate to.
Yeah.
So let's go back to what we should know about them that they're not going to tell us that's different than the way we would think what they need. So what about stuff we should have in the house? Like, how do they hang out?
Okay, well, let me go back to what normal feline behaviors are, because that's really what we're needing to meet. When we talk, there's these things called the welfare people talk about, animal welfare people talk about the 5 freedoms, and they include freedom from thirst and hunger, freedom from pain, freedom and disease, all these sorts of things. But they also talk about freedom from distress, and they also talk and the ability to perform species appropriate behaviors. And so normal behaviors for a cat include play, investigation, observation. You think about how much time they sit there and they're watching and on their perch and trying to see what's going on. Hunting. Remember, if you have to succeed and get 8 to 10 small meals a day, you're probably hunting anywhere from its estimated 10 to 15 times as often, which is a very busy day. Okay. Feeding, it doesn't take very long. Drinking also doesn't take long. Scratching, you scratch for exercise and you scratch to shed the sheaths, and you also scratch, as you'd alluded to leave marks for territory, and at the same time you're leaving the pheromones from the pads, the scent from your pads. Traveling to check out your territory and just out of curiosity. Scent marking with urine or pads or nails or cheeks, rubbing your cheeks. Eliminating. And you look at, when you watch how cats eliminate, you look at how long they bury. I used to think, oh, well, cats bury their urine or feces because they're so clean. No, it's not. They're not. I mean, yeah, they're clean, fine, but they're covered in spit. But that's that aside. As far as the reason they're burying it is so nobody can find them, because what we have to understand is that cats are prey to everybody other than mice or small birds. Cats are prey, not predators. Anybody can kill a cat. And then the two other things.
I think this point is so interesting, and this is something that I've been reading a lot about lately, how much information is in pee and poop.
Yeah.
And so when I want you to have the information, when I want to leave you a message, I'm very deliberate about it. But when I have to go to the bathroom, but if I don't want to leave information, I have to be really, really careful.
Yeah.
So not only, if you think about it, it's like kind of a strange analogy, but if you think about it, they're like writing a letter.
Yeah.
And
I call it P-mail. When they're spraying, it's P-mail, and that message that they're leaving is you can't change it once it's been delivered. It's kind of like you went, oh, I responded all when I meant it to be to one person only. Anyway, so it's P-mail, but it has to be refreshed because it will disintegrate over time as well. But they spend a lot of time hiding it so that they're safe. Safety is so important to them. They're small and they're vulnerable. And then the other thing, of course, is resting safely and sleeping safely. Those are, really important things. So the American Association of Feline Practitioners and the International Society of Feline ISFM Medicine created a lovely set of guidelines, meeting environmental needs. And this isn't, we used to think of this as being enrichment, but in fact, it's not enrichment. It is simply providing the bare bones needs. And sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just something, I'm just taking a deep breath on that, because I think it's been a real evolution in our thinking, to even get to the place where we identified them and then identified that they were really important enough that you great people at the AFP put out a position statement, which I like to joke about veterinarians, but to get veterinarians to agree on something and then to agree on it enough that they will put a flag in the ground, this is a big deal.
Yes.
And the title for it, I'm sure, it was the first one in like 2003, the first position statement.
I think it was 2005. The first one was the first retrovirus one. And then, no, it has to be earlier than that, because 1994 before we did the first vaccination panel.
I meant the one on enrichment.
Oh, okay, that was 2013.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
Sarah Ellis led that one. It was 2013. Rodan, Sarah Heath, all these amazing, great people.
amazing.
Yeah, amazing people, amazing people.
So it went from identifying them, then getting understanding how important they were, that we're going to put a flag in the ground, stating how important they were, to now, I almost think we should revisit this and change the language, because even with my invention that is called the hunting feeder, everyone wants to call it a toy, and it's silly when I say, actually, can you not call it a toy?
An indoor feeding device. It's a hunting device. Yeah.
Because toy means that it's an option, and for cats, hunting shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that we need to rethink our language, and if we're ready to be even more aggressive about how strongly we make people understand how important these things are. We're actually, by not providing from them before we know that they need them, and waiting until we have the sickness behaviors and we have the stress, we're really doing a disservice by not being more aggressive about it. And you and I have been talking about bravery lately, and I think to put that flag in the ground and be assertive about it, I'm ready to bring it up.
Yeah, I think we need to, and like use what you said with languaging. I'm going to bring it back to COVID-19. I wish people would quit using the term social distancing. It's physical distancing, plain and simple. And social distancing makes it look kind of it sugarcoats it. And if people understand, there's no question about physical distancing. It's just what it is, and that's what cats want too. But bring it back to cats and feeding. I mean, they use it as the third pillar. They talk about 5 pillars of environmental needs, and the third pillar actually is an opportunity for play and expression of predatory behaviors, and that's where your indoor hunting device fits in, and that.
We'll get in a semantic argument there too. I'm into words. I really like it. But I think that interactive play is different than solitary hunting. And I think that they should be in different categories. That's just me. Because play.
I don't think we're talking interactive play, though. I mean, at least that's not how I've heard it. I've heard that the way I've heard the term play in this context is not playing with people at all. No. This is playing with, and that's why, if you can see the slide that I have on this, it's actually a toy mouse versus a real mouse, and being able to having light toys that they can throw in the air and chase, or having a dangly thing that moves in a similar way that you might be interacting with them, but it's to mimic a bird's movement.
Because when I hear different lecturers speak about it, when they talk about that pillar, they're usually talking that you should schedule 2 play sessions with at least 2 play sessions, and everyone's a little different on this, but 5 to 15 minutes a day. Whereas hunting is catch, play, eat.
Absolutely.
A whole different. A toy.
No, that's completely different, because that actually isn't. That's the 4th pillar: positive, consistent, and predictable interactions with humans. That is a different thing. Because at least in the way I've understood these pillars to be, because
right? So you probably
I wasn't involved with those ones. I wish I had been, but an opportunity for play and expression of predatory behaviors. I think that's where going back to those behaviors, those natural behaviors that cats do, as you show in your lovely diagram. Play is a key part. Playing with their prey is a key part of the behavior. To that point, I also want to mention, people will buy, and I used to, I'd bring home a new toy for the cats, and they would. There's nobody in here, no. And they would. Do you need that topped up? Do you need that topped up? Yeah. Okay. Let me just top that up for you. Let me get that over here. Whoops, wrong side. Hate this mirror image stuff here. Okay, well, you're doing great.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, right. I can't mirror image. So I'll keep working on my own body over here. But no, I wanted to share.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Play, where was I? Play.
I just want to say, it seems like we're sparring over words, but when we're dealing with understanding a creature that is so different than us socially and in their behavior, these words to me really matter because it helps us focus and understand the true need. And one of my passions is trying to interpret those words into something that the average person walking down the aisle of a pet store can understand.
Words are incredibly important. Incredibly important. When I'm lecturing, I do not. I do webinars. I'm not fond of doing webinars because I need to be able to put my but I know, Steve, I'm not on the radios, or thank goodness I'm not on the radio, so I can't use the ASS word. But anyways, in the chair and listen to myself in order to be able to hear what people are hearing, because communication isn't what comes out of my mouth. Communication is what you hear. That's what communication is.
My daughter likes to tell me that all the time. But Mom, what you said was, and she's right, it doesn't really matter what I intended. What she heard is often, I'm like, what? I never said that, but that's what she heard. So I'm getting my own lesson in this right now. And
yeah, kids will do that. Kids will do that. So, but back to toys. You go and you buy some toys. And I bring home a toy, and the cats come and investigate it, and I make sure that there's at least a meter, preferably two, between the cats. And so if you're playing laser pointer, which is a whole other story, with a cat, you need to make obviously you need to make sure that they can catch and kill something at the end of it, eat something at the end of it, but also.
I think you should pause on that point. I don't think people know that.
Okay. All right. So I'll just, back to the spacing though with laser pointer, you don't go playing laser pointer. Like I live with 3 cats. I serve 3 cats, and I don't go at playing the laser pointer close to the other cats, because that's just going to create tension, and they need to be on guard then. And that's not what the purpose is. So when people are talking, back to your point, and I will get there, but back to your point about the, people saying you should play with your cats for, 2 sessions, 15 minutes or whatever a day. That's about exercise, which is very, very different. Very different. And as far as that goes, 15 minutes is ridiculous. Cats never do anything that long. And when they play with a toy, if you bring home a new toy and they play with it for 2 minutes and then they walk off and you think, oh, that was a waste of $7.95, or whatever. In fact, it wasn't, because that is how long a cat will play with something. That is how long a cat plays with something. They're not going to sit and be occupied with Nintendo for 3 days in a closed room. It's 2 minutes. So that's
it was that I heard talk. It was probably you, but to say that human beings are low frequency, high intensity interactors. That really resonated with me. So like you and I will have a conversation, if I'm lucky and you've been in town for a lecture, we'll have dinner and just talk for 3 hours.
But then I'm involved there though.
Little cheese, but then I won't maybe talk to you for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas cats want to say, hey, how you doing? And leave. And then come back and say, hey, how you doing? And leave. So it's exactly the opposite. So cats are high frequency, low intensity.
And dogs, of course, are like us, in which it's like, oh, I want to go play Frisbee for 2 hours. And then that's it. Whereas for a cat, it's, I'm going to come and lie on your lap when you're trying to type on the keyboard. And then of course, there's that whole, they've trained us so well there, but, get down, jump back up, get down, so it's very, very short interactions. But back to the laser pointer. So when you play with it, because of the whole hunt play cycle that is and groom and all that sort of thing, that is key to that whole circle of behavior, and you have to complete it. What cats will do is, like, if you play laser pointer with them, that's great. But then when you're done playing with them, or when they're getting near done with being played with, or playing rather, you need to have it land on a treat. Okay, so that and then you turn it off, so that when they put their paw on that last dot, staying still, they catch something they can eat, and that is really, really important.
And so when they don't do that, this is I like to be a little saucy. Behaviorists like to call that phenomenon a heightened state of arousal.
Yes.
And I like to say nobody likes to be left in a heightened state of arousal.
Oh, you vixen. So
they're like, this hunt is happening, and then the dot went away, and I'm still looking for the dot.
And there's a greater chance that they'll feel frustrated. They will feel their needs aren't being met, and they will also. This is sounding way too much like a whole bunch of shades of gray, but they will then be they can take it out in unhealthy ways. They can either internalize it, or maybe they'll start biting your leg when you walk down the hall. Totally unrelated to this behavior.
And for people, it's like, why was my cat biting my leg? Well, it's because 15 minutes ago you left them keyed up.
They're frustrated. Yeah. Or this frustration may be still from yesterday.
And that's so hard for people to understand. We need cause and effect to be on a
immediate. Well, this is wave a magic wand and give me a pill and have me lose weight. And none of this exercise.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let me just talk about the 5 pillars.
Sorry.
The first pillar is a safe space. Emphasis on safe. And that space needs to be away from others, and the cat has to be able to get there on their own. So this is really important to bear in mind. You may have a lovely climbing post with a perch up top where they can observe and sleep and all this sort of stuff, but not so good if they have to walk through a whole bunch of kids or a whole bunch of noisy equipment or through a busy kitchen or a bunch of other cats or a barking dog to get there, or other, so that's not so, or they have arthritis and can't get there. So that's important, a safe space. The second one is multiple.
Can we go back to the safe space one? So in an average household, we see the cat tree and the resting spaces sometimes like where we don't want them in our space. So it'll be in the guest bedroom or it'll be down the hall. Will you explain where, for the average person trying to figure it out in their own home, what would you say? No, it's not going to be perfect for every home because you can't see
every cat.
Yeah, you can't see it. But what are your go-tos for if you just had to say your cat would really like it if you put their resting space almost always
where they're actually wanting to go? So you need to figure out where that is, and it may be in the bedroom, but it may also be in the living room right by, or even the dining room. So it's because that's where they can see, out the window. They can watch you guys while you eat, or watch what's happening in the kitchen from the dining room. Whether or not they want to interact with you directly is a completely separate thing. It's they need to, in order to stay safe as small solitary survivors, they have to be able to anticipate if any threats coming, which is why they spend so much time observing. And they observe because they're curious, sure, the whole curiosity killed the cat thing, but they also need to be able to hunker down and become invisible or get the heck out of Dodge really easily.
So focus on, if you're figuring out where to put a cat tree or a resting space so that your cat will look at what their behavior is now, where are they spending time, and give them something there.
Well, and it ties into the second pillar, which is making sure that they have multiple and separated resource stations, so that it's not just one place to sleep. It's 2 places. It's not just one place to observe. It's 2 places. And people think, oh gosh, I don't have this much room, and cat trees are so ugly, and blah blah blah. Maybe they don't want that, but in fact, it doesn't have to be a cat tree. It could be a trunk set in some nice rocks with some ledges off of it. It can be rather than the carpeted thing. It can be. Cats have to be able to get high. They have to be able to get away. They need to be able to get away when they want to. It could be even an open cupboard where they can get onto a shelf in the closet or something like that if they need to get away. But so those resources are not just a place to sleep and a place to not just a place to sleep and perch, but also food, obviously, and water. And unlike us, where we have our plate and then our water glass and our cutlery and our serviette and all that sort of stuff in a certain order, that's not the way it is for cats. Cats, they'll catch a mouse over there, and they'll catch a mouse over there, and they'll catch a bird back there, and the water puddle is over there. So, it's multiple and separated resources. So the litter needs to be, the cat needs multiple litter opportunities. Often, even if you only have one cat, the cat may, which means you're saying that the cat may in fact have use one to urinate in and the other to defecate in. And even if you keep them meticulously clean, that's what they want to do. So you need multiple litter boxes, multiple scratching surfaces, which is where these things, and they need to be sturdy. You don't want them swaying and where the cat doesn't feel secure.
Something I'm obsessed with right now, because I spend a lot of time trying to see if there's holes in the things that are available at the store, and then I'll figure out how to do them. And there's really a mismatch. Because almost everything that you can find at your average pet store is small and movable, which is wrong for a cat, even if the surface is correct.
And they're also all designed for people, especially when you talk about litter boxes. Hooded litter boxes, get rid of them. Get rid of the hoods. Cats need to be able to see if a threat is coming. They don't want privacy. They're really anxious about being ambushed. Even if they're the only cat on the 21st floor of an apartment building in, beautiful downtown Chicago, like Steve lives in, then, it's the issue there is, they still, at their gut level, at their inner core brain level, their primitive brain, they are prey. And so they need to be able to see what's coming. Additionally, litter boxes need to be about 1.5 to 2 times the length of a cat. You don't find these things in pet stores.
I'll tell you why. I love understanding the retail business now, because I've learned so much. Things are expensive to ship
and store. They take up a lot of space.
So the appropriate size litter box, just because of the size, would be 3 times more expensive than the postage stamp litter boxes that you see in the store. And getting people to understand why the appropriate size litter box is $50 and not $15 is really, really hard.
Which is why, instead of buying a litter box, I know something near and dear to your heart.
Yes, I'm trying so hard.
I just use storage boxes that from the Rona, Revy, Lowe's, Canadian Tire, whatever, hardware store type place, because they have the space for these, they expect to have the shelving space for these big boxes, and they're dirt cheap, and they're solid plastic, and then you cut down the edge, one edge, so that they can get in and out really easily. So that's something that's really important. And then toys. So it's food, water, litter, bed, perching, scratching, and toys are really important for
my dear LVT, cat LVT, Ellen Carosa just chimed in. If we could pause for a second and talk about litter.
Ellen.
Hi, Ellen. Litter robots and automatic litter boxes and that kind of thing.
Oh God, I hope you're not going to disagree with me, Ellen. But I certainly, I do not like those. Again, there's noise associated with them, and cats want to, they need to feel safe and secure. So if somebody does have, I don't even know how many of those are still out there, but if they do have an automated type litter, self-cleaning type box, it should not clean itself until probably 20 minutes after the cat leaves.
They are still out there, and they're growing in popularity, actually. And there are new ones coming on the market that have technology that's trying to give you a lot of data, but it's like this big. And so what I want people to understand, I'm so excited about cat innovation, but when we forget the basics and get excited about bells and whistles, we have a problem. So
forgetting about who a cat is and what a cat, what's important to the cat. We have to come from there. And that's actually what, you and I are talking about with reinvigorating veterinarians after this whole pandemic is over, is back to the basics and building a brighter, wiser future, because we've gone way overboard with bells and whistles and the like. It's just what's Ellen got to say there?
Well, she's saying that
she hates them. Fantastic.
Yeah. So when we think about what a cat wants,
yes,
you guys did a great job.
They want sand and soil. They don't want clear crystals. They don't want, all this kind of fancy schmancy stuff that is flushable and whatever. I mean,
and they want a huge space that they can move around in. And if you haven't cleaned it,
and dig and bury.
Clean and bury, and they want to be able to get away from what they want to get away from in the box. They want to be able to get in and out easily. They want for it to be located in a space that they feel safe in. It's when they're their most vulnerable.
But not trapped.
But not trapped. Right? There's a lot of subtleties that the regular person can't even begin to. It's so different than, and actually in the bathroom, I'm going to say isn't so different than us.
Is it so different though? Because if you are, let's say you're driving down, name your favorite or least favorite turnpike or highway, and you're, zotting along and you've had too much coffee to drink and you desperately need to use a bathroom and there's no bathroom within wherever. And so you pull over to the side of the road and, you hustle over to where you hopefully aren't going to be seen, and you drop your drawers and you are hyper vigilant because you feel very vulnerable at that time. And the chances are somebody's just going to see you and make fun of you. They're not going to drop out of the sky like a hawk and pick you up or eat you by being some other prey. So
and now you're back in that bathroom, and out of nowhere is this giant loud noise, and your toilet starts vibrating. Like, whoa. And so
it's a Toro and you've gotten used to it and it's a nice warm seat. But otherwise it's like total freakdom.
But so cats where their litter box is next to like the washing machine or the boiler in your house, where the cat can't figure out why that noise is happening for no reason. And a motorized litter box that is, even if they're not in it and they're in the room and the thing is going off, it's like, I'm not going in there anymore. I can't predict that. So those things that seem to make our lives more convenient could be the cause of your problem.
And it's not just the cat deciding to pee and poop somewhere you don't want them to pee and poop, but also it could cause them gut distress. It could cause them asthma. It could cause them all kinds of other things. These sickness.
It's so hard, right? Because the source of stress may not in any way be directly related to the sign of stress.
Right.
So it's like, well, he's using the litter robot, but he's also throwing up hairballs twice a week.
Right. And the hairballs could be from over grooming, because why is he over grooming? Well, is he over grooming because his skin bugs him? Is he because he has fleas or allergy or something? Or is he over grooming because he's stressed and he's trying to, and grooming releases endorphins, happy drugs, or is he grooming because he's got pain somewhere and he's soothing the grooming over it, like rubbing your tummy if you have a tummy ache or something, and so why is he doing that?
Like, to circle back to the 5 pillars, things that we think are making our lives more convenient may actually be making them sick in a way that's not directly related. So it's our responsibility to understand what those things are and provide them, to let's not wait until the cat is throwing up hairballs twice a week. People always say, I circle back around to what I'm obsessed with all the time, which is feeding. Oh, so we should use it for fat cats. Like, no, we should use it for, yes, but we should use it for kittens. We should, like, every cat hunts.
Yeah.
Every cat goes to the bathroom. Yeah. We should be providing for those basic needs without making them struggle in a way that's outside of their normal behaviors.
Yeah.
We really have a hard time wrapping our brain around that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to reiterate the things that you might think are making your life more convenient may actually be making your cat sick. So there's so much to talk about that I got off track, but we talked about places to rest, multiple and separate resources, places to hide. You talked a little bit about
separate resources include all of those, the food, the water, the litter, the places to hide, the bed, the perch, the scratching, the toys, all of those things. And then opportunity for play and expression of predatory behaviors. So I think that I agree with you. The wording there could just be an opportunity for expression of predatory behaviors, and leave out the play, because play is part of that. They play with their food, okay, which is again why your device, your indoor feeding or your indoor hunting device is so perfect. But there, I'm just happy if people use puzzles of any sort, because puzzles are critical for feeding small amounts, frequently 8 tiny meals a day, as opposed to the free endlessly full bowl.
You have a great graphic that I confess to having stolen way back when you made this, because you were cutting edge here, but of the size of a mouse, the size of the edible contents of a mouse, and the size of a meal for a cat.
10 to 15 pieces of dry food is one meal.
But not 10 to 15 pieces a day, 10 to 15 pieces at a time.
A meal at a time. And then that's, 10 to 15 pieces of dry food is equivalent to a mouse or a small bird. And they need 8 or 10 times that, and they should be spread out. Like, not that you need to be out there feeding your cat 8 to 10 times a day. I hope you've got more to do with your life than that, but rather, that the cat is able to hunt 8 to 10 times a day to get these feed meals, or let's instead say, like I do with mine, 6 times a day, and then twice a day they get fed canned food, because I really want them to eat canned food as well.
How much is a meal of canned food? About a tablespoon and a half?
Well, no, it may be about, 156 grams or 5.5 ounces, about a third of that, a third of a hockey puck size can. I'm Canadian. Hockey puck size, which is, for you guys, 5.5 ounces, for us, 156 grams, but about a third of that a couple of times a day. And that would be their canned equivalent. But it's really important that you know how many calories a day, or how much that equates to in quantity of food your cat needs per day, to help make sure that they neither become overweight or underweight. And cats have trained us brilliantly. You walk into the kitchen after work with a bag of groceries, you put them on the counter, your cat's winding themselves around your legs, and you stroke the kitty and have a nice interaction, and meanwhile, and you're fixing yourself something for dinner, and you figure that your cat's hungry, so you feed your cat. So the cat's learned rub around legs equals is Pavlov's conditioning. I rub around her legs and she gives me food, and it's brilliant. And so that happens really, really easily. And then additionally, we feed them these all-you-can-eat buffets, and no wonder we have such a dreadful problem with obesity. But also,
Go ahead. I was going to say, it merits saying that for the non-veterinary people out here, being overweight for a cat means they're going to be sick. It's not just that it's cute and they're a little chubby. It actually is making them painful and sick. So it's something that we really need to think about. It's not okay. It's not okay. And most people who have cats don't know that their cats are fat, which is just mind-boggling. Can we talk for a second? I'm very interested in your opinion on automatic feeders, because one of the things that people talk a lot about is portion control and weight loss. But when I talk to people who feed automatic feeders, and they've been very successful in getting their cat to lose weight with automatic feeders, I ask them, for the hour before the timer goes off and the thing opens, where is your cat? And they all say,
I think and again, it depends on the personality of the cat. but I was really put off by them by, personal experience with my brother-in-law's cat who spent, Arnold, who was massive, and he spent his life, he didn't budge from beside that automated feeder.
And there's the study from, I think it's 2017. It's in
No, who is it?
No, it's a Scandinavian study talking about feline lower urinary disease, and controlling the feeding schedule was associated with not having urinary disease, and the cat being in control of the feeding schedule.
The cat being in control of it.
And when the human was in control of the feeding schedule, those cats are more likely to have urinary disease, which I think somehow correlates to the automatic feeders in a way. I wish I had a team of researchers and a couple $1 billion, because there's so much I want to know that I think I'm putting together a pattern, but I don't know. There
was a lovely study long time ago that showed that, in conjunction with, as I mentioned, some of, but definitely not all of the disease conditions that cats who are confined to living indoors are at far greater risk for than cats who go outside. And one of them was specifically that cats who had the opportunity to go outside and hunt had significantly lower rates of lower urinary tract disease than those cats who didn't. Now, that presumably comes back to the whole stress factor and idiopathic cystitis, and the fact that idiopathic or interstitial cystitis, the inflammatory cells slough off of the lining of the bladder into the urethra, and who knows what causes the inflammation, but is related to stress, and that can actually cause an obstruction too. So we always think of that may catch some crystals. We've always thought of it being strictly a metabolic thing, a crystal thing, a plug, crystals, but it can be that those crystals happen to be there, but they get caught in all this inflammatory gunk that's associated with stress.
And this is why I left your lecture in 2014 and became obsessed with trying to recreate hunting for cats in the indoor environment. Because when you went through those 3 days, everything had a direct line back to the catch, play, eat multiple small meals a day. It was over and over and over and over. And Tony Buffington has a guesstimate that cats spend about 80% of their waking hours in nature hunting. So if you take away a natural behavior that's 80% of your time, now imagine us right now, because the reason we decided to have this particular conversation tonight was because we are all stuck inside.
Having fever.
Imagine you are now back in my bird's nest. So you're in an environment that doesn't suit your needs, and you're being fed in a way that doesn't suit your needs, and you can't rest where you want to rest, you can't do what you want to do, and then I took away what you were supposed to be doing 80% of the time that you are awake.
I believe that's illegal in jails. Yeah. So it's, and I know a lot of people will say, yeah, but it's so much safer. It's so much safer. But let me finish these environmental needs pillars, okay? And then I want to circle back to that. So we've had a safe place, multiple and separated resources, the opportunity to play as an expression. I think maybe we even just said as an expression rather than expression of predatory behaviors. Then also positive, consistent, and predictable interactions with humans, so that they know that you'll play with them at this and this time, but that you'll also leave them alone if they want, and that you'll respond a certain way. They jump on my lap, I'm going to put them down if they're, if my hands are on the keyboard. Otherwise, they're it's fine, sort of thing. And then the last. Yeah.
That one. Can we talk about punishment really quickly, because I think people don't understand that one. And when you say positive and predictable, spraying your cat with
water
or using a scat mat where you electrocute your cat to keep them off of places where you don't want them to be, or using loud noises to startle them off of places you don't want them to be. Can you just talk about that for a quick second?
Sure.
We say number.
Sure. This is something that, Ellen would be amazing to have her chiming in on this. So rather than using negative reinforcement, on top of which, because cats are solitary survivors and they don't need us, unlike, dogs or other people where we need each other's approval, or for most of us, we need each other's approval or we wither and die. And we will, and we do lots of things in order to get people's approval. Not that Steve would know anything about that. And anyway, so this is something where, whereas a cat, they can take us or leave us. They don't, if we're not, if there's no benefit for them, and they're not living on the 21st floor somewhere, they'll just bugger off and move somewhere else. If that's feasible, or if it's worth their effort. But rather than punishment, because if they're doing something, you come home and they found that you found that they've sprayed something. And I know Ash was on here, and she's just repainted my whole house, thanks to a best painter in the world, that just because of all this bloody cat pee. If they, I need to catch them at it, and every single time. If I'm going to use any form of negative reinforcement, and that is not, we don't do that, and it doesn't work worth a diddle. Instead, with cats, because they will just bugger off and do something else, they don't need to please us. It works a lot better if instead I have a mat on my desk here, and so if somebody wants to be on my lap while I'm typing, I put them on, I touch here, and they get a treat on the mat, and off they go. They're on the mat, and so positively reinforcing rather than negative reinforcement works a heck of a lot better, and it's more complicated than that. But
and you might find that your cat is peeing outside the litter box because you're spraying it with a water gun on the kitchen counter, right? So if you stop for a sec and think about it, all that you're doing is scaring them. And so you're increasing their fear, you're increasing their anxiety, and they're going to express that in some way, usually that you're not going to like.
Exactly. And that's a really important distinction too, is we talk about behavior problems. Spraying and scratching are not behavior problems. They are problem behaviors. They're perfectly normal behaviors from a cat's point of view. It's just we don't like them. And it's really important to distinguish between that and somebody who's obsessively over grooming themselves and is ripping out their hair or something like that. That's a behavior problem. Okay, but problem behaviors are our problem, and we put them on the cat. And that, when it's completely normal, it's because our expectations of a cat, and this is really summarizing it, our expectations of a cat are unrealistic and unfair to the cat. We need to let the cat be a cat, right? It's
like mic drop. And so in those ways that, and I think there's so much learning. Like I said, I'm still learning, and I'm obsessed with this topic, but for the general public to do. But what I'm focusing on now is that behavior is trying to tell me something. That cat is using those normal behaviors as nonverbal communication. So if I can try to figure out what they're communicating and then change the environment to better suit their need, then I'm going to stop the behavior without creating a new one I don't like. But it's really quite complicated. For the human brain, for the cat brain, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. It's really
Tabitha Cusera, who I love, who's done a bunch of these with me, she loves the expression WTF. That when we're like WTF she called what's the function?
Yeah.
What's the function? And try to understand why.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've got 2 issues of Vet Clinics of North America that coming out that I have the honor of being the guest editor for. And my whole point in these 2 issues is to try and look at not just feline medicine update, which there is a lot of in there, but health and wellness, and that wellness, And this is where Tony Buffington, by opening our eyes to that, the fact that idiopathic cystitis, and oh my gosh, not just idiopathic cystitis, but all of the components of Pandora syndrome, namely the hyperthyroidism, the asthma, the inflammatory bowel disease, all these other conditions, skin dermatopathies, etc., behavior issues, can be a result of stress. Stress can be your mom's stress. I like blaming my mom for everything, but anyway.
And I wonder what else eventually will be on that list. What about IBD that may or may not ultimately turn to lymphoma? And what about kidney disease? Like, I'm really interested in that. We don't know. We have a lot of questions.
We don't know. We know, but you think about, you go back to the origin of words, and disease is dis-ease. So right there. But anyways, the fifth pillar.
We finally got to number 5. Refill for number 5.
Is an environment. Oh, wait, give me some too.
Okay, I got you.
Where the heck is this? Is this side? I don't know how to do this. Over this away. Here we go. It's pathetic, isn't it? The fifth pillar is an environment that respects the importance of a cat's sense of smell. And a cat's sense of smell is probably their most important sense, which again is difficult for us to understand, even though we respect it and utilize it in dogs, because unfortunately we do make dogs our, dog's man's best friend. Also, we use them as slaves, but it is. I know, trigger words all over the place, but the cat's sense of smell is, for us, it's vision. And for cats, it's smell. Their sense of smell is so powerful. How do they communicate? How do they keep their territory? It's through a sense of smell. And then secondary to that is if it's for medium range communication and so you can change your expression, it's visual things. But it is, and auditory. But long distance, it's smell. And at night it's smell, and if there's lots of vegetation, it's smell, whereas when you can't, see see these changes. So the importance, when a cat marks a corner, of your chest of drawers, or marks something by, newel, is that what they're called in your handrail, like in your stairwell?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
whatever it is. Yeah, the things that come down. Yeah, exactly. And when they mark that, for heaven's sakes, don't wash it off and don't paint over it. Again, Ash, best painter in the world. She knows at our place, she paints around those black, greasy kind of spots, brown spots, and leaves them, because otherwise the options, they're saying this is my territory, and cats have 3 ways of marking it. They mark, and they're all associated with scent or vision. They can scratch it, leaving scent and marks, visual marks. They can spray it, or they can cheek mark it. And which would you prefer? If they're spraying your stuff, wouldn't you rather having them cheek mark it, or putting some type of stable, a board with some carpet on the wall, just affixing it to the wall? And you can do really fun and funky things. You can do cutouts in cat shape. You can do them in diamonds and do them up and down and make them up, whatever you want, but sturdy, so that if the cat feels a desire to spray somewhere, you're saying, hey, I'd rather you didn't spray, but I understand that for some reason that I don't understand, you have a need to mark here. So could you please switch your mode of marking? But in any case, an environment that respects the importance of a cat's sense of smell.
I want to talk about that in some really practical terms for the human household. So, I see different. What's that?
My glass is empty.
Oh, let me help you.
I can go with that.
Oh, okay. What is the actual number? Because I throw this around, and I've read everywhere from 40% to 100% stronger than a human sense of smell.
I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I don't know that that's known, but there was a very nice graphic that I saw and used, but I do not know what it's based on, that shows that it's actually only about 30% less than that of dogs. And as soon as I say that, I know Steve would jump in and say, hey, it depends on on the dog breed, because there's huge variation with dog breeds. But we don't spend in fact, Daniel Mills just posted on Facebook today a group of papers or a link to a group of papers about dog smell. And because that's been studied so much, because it's something people can use. And so a lot of papers about dog smell, and I just replied and said, hey, got anything about cats? And he said, afraid not. He's at Daniel Mills, is an amazing behaviorist. So that's our state of understanding is pretty pathetic there.
We in cat behavior, it's really interesting how cats use smell to communicate with each other. But in the human environment, it's also really important for us to know that scents are really strong to them.
Huge to them.
Our perfume, Febreze, fabric laundry detergent. When you clean their litter box, if you clean it with a citrus-based cleaner, which almost all soaps and cleansers have a citrus base to them, cats hate it.
They also hate. We used to use that. It's so crazy with inappropriate urination. We used to say, put tinfoil on the walls where they're spraying, so they hate the sound. We put down an uncomfortable surface, like that was like if you take a carpet, rolly chair carpet under thing that has the spikes on the bottom to dig into the carpet. You turn that upside down so they don't want to be on that. You take put a lemon scented air freshener near where they're spraying, or you put something with some Listerine near where they're spraying to discourage them from using that spot. It's just like, no, you're not listening to what they're saying. You're not listening to what they're saying. You're not meeting their needs at all. But yes, they absolutely hate those smells. And yeah.
I think it's like when you're a little kid and you hug your relative who overdoes the perfume, and it's like, oh. So imagine if that is, you can't get away with it.
And in vet clinics too, we will cover up, we will use nice things, aromatherapy to make people feel relaxed, and also to cover up unpleasant smells that, we're doing the best we can to get rid of. But, where we're these days,
I go to
like lavender-based cleaners. Cats actually quite like lavender. Hope just don't overdo it, because if you're like me, I like lavender, but not too much of it. So if you're not a little old lady, too much of it.
I go to give lunch and learns at cat hospitals or veterinary hospitals, and a lot of them sell scented candles in the waiting room.
Yeah, burrs. Yeah, so
like it. Your cat does not like it. So we talk about the things they don't like, but let's talk a little bit about scent enrichment, because what they do like is actually really helpful to their life. So tell me how you feel about catnip and silvervine.
Oh, so and valerian and catnip, and there are some things that they really like. They also seem to really like some of the, but I'm not sure how much of it is flavor versus smell. They really like anything that has an umami flavor. Okay, and sometimes that comes through in the smell, or at least if you've got somebody like I had one of my cats. Jennifer Cuddlesby, she would eat through any, my cats all have two names. She would eat through a ripe cantaloupe, because, that, and sure, so I don't know whether that was the smell, or because cantaloupe has quite an umami flavor. My cats, Nimitz will come running for, I actually can't remember what Nimitz's middle name is, because he's just, other than Nimitz, a-hole, but he'll come running if I open peanut butter, and so there's certain smells that are umami that they really, really like. So I don't know, what smells are you thinking of other than like silvervine, valerian, catnip?
Those are the ones that I was thinking of, that we can use those to create enrichment for them. Right. What they don't like is interesting, but what they do like, we can use to make their day better.
Well, and also as far as enrichment goes, also textural enrichment, both for their feet. So we have rolling pads at home, and they're these kind of lumpy, bumpy doormats that I otherwise wouldn't have. Like they're the woven rag rug kinds of things that I otherwise wouldn't have, and we sprinkle catnip on them so that it's the combination of texture as well as aroma, and also things like cat grass, so that you have the texture of eating soft oat grass, that sort of thing too. But yeah.
Well, I kept you like 30 minutes longer than I said I would.
That's fine. I just did want to mention one other thing, though, if I can. I know we're over, and I really
No, I'll talk to you all night if you want.
and I honestly have only gone through not quite half a bottle of this. Is
Let's finish that.
The thing is how important it is. People are certainly concerned about. I just want to reiterate about the risks of indoor versus outdoor. I mean, certainly we have certainly it's been considered in our part of the world, but not the rest of the world. Okay, we do not live in a bubble, as coronavirus is showing us. It spreads everywhere. There are other places other than Canada and the United States. Certainly keeping them indoors is they're less likely to come in contact with certain infectious diseases, external and internal parasites, less likely at a risk for rabies, for feline immunodeficiency virus or FIV, being hit by a car. Pretty unlikely if you're indoors, especially on the 21st floor. Being in a fight with another cat or another animal, falling, getting lost, being stolen, being exposed to antifreeze or rat poison, eating food that your parents don't want you to eat, or getting pregnant if you haven't been spayed. But with the increased risks for living indoors, in addition to some of the ones I've already mentioned, lower urinary tract diseases are higher, hyperthyroidism, being bored, inactive, decreased fitness, becoming obese because of that, and if you're so predisposed if you are predisposed to diabetes from obesity, you can get that. Dental, resorptive lesions. But we think about the household hazards too, that an outdoor cat or somebody who goes outside is, if they're playing outside, they're not so likely to be swallowing small objects or getting burned by walking across the stove, or being exposed to cleaning chemicals, or eating your house plants like spider plants and a lot of plants indoors, coming in contact with medications that maybe you rub on yourself, or like Voltaren or other things. Secondhand smoke, which causes cancer in cats as well, not lung cancer, it causes intestinal cancer. Trauma such as falls off of a bookcase, or getting caught in a blind cord and strangling. I've seen that, being electrocuted. The problem behaviors that come from not having their needs met, or behavior problems, those obsessive behaviors, and then certain skin conditions. So those are very, very real. But if you want to be, we have this belief that in order to be a responsible person, you need to keep them indoors. And so if we're going to keep them indoors, we have to meet their environmental needs, those 5 pillars that we've been talking about. And there are also ways where they can have the best of both worlds, where they can go outside without being at risk. You can teach them how to walk on a harness. There's some good sites for that. For some cats that works, not for all cats. Cats can also have window boxes or catios or cat tunnels into cat enclosures, which can be pretty interesting and well done. Additionally, and I'd be remiss in not talking about, along with with the hunting, the effects of cats hunting on wildlife and birds, small birds, and other animals, which is extremely problematic in Australia, where they have unique animals that aren't found anywhere else. That are being wiped out. So there are cat curfews, and there's a huge 5 million cat cull going on there. I suspect Steve's already written something about that. But additionally, but we can't put all the blame onto cats, because we're the ones who are encroaching on wildlife habitat, putting up buildings with lots of glass that the birds fly into, polluting the air, et cetera, et cetera. Nonetheless, there are these things called Birds Be Safe collars. And if Jules were in here right now, you'd see him wearing his Birds Be Safe collar, which is essentially, we don't use this word around him. We call it his tuxedo collar around him. It's a clown freaking collar. It's scrunchy is what it looks like, and it's on a breakaway collar. And this is great because we know that bells don't work with birds, because they respond to color. They're visual rather than auditory. Sure, they sing and all that kind of stuff, but they're visual. Their primary sense is visual. So and Jules is our big hunter, and if he's got that on and he goes outside, I feed a lot of birds. I've got a huge, bird feeding stations outside in my garden. and 3 cats that go outside whenever they want. They have a cat door. When when 2 of them are out, the birds couldn't care less. As soon as Jules shows up with his collar, they disappear. So that really helps. So as far as which is better, indoors or out, who knows? I think the key is though that we make sure that if we're going to keep them indoors, we must meet their behavioral and their behavioral needs, and recognize that some cats will never adapt to being strictly indoors. There's some great resources though too, which maybe you can post on your site afterwards.
Yeah, it was that when in 2014, when my world got turned upside down by you ended those 3 days of lectures by asking the whole room full of veterinarians. And again, it was an AFP series, so it was feline veterinarians who are obsessed with all this information. And you asked us, do you know the number 1 cause of death for cats? And no one in the room, including me, knew the answer. Right, mic drop. No one, including me, knew the answer. And you told us?
Well, euthanasia, but that's what did I tell you that day?
Yeah, you said euthanasia, and the number 1 cause of euthanasia is being surrendered to
Behavior.
Shelter for behavior. And so
Absolutely.
the moment for me was you just told me why we are getting all these bad behaviors. Then you just told me the number 1 cause of death for cats is euthanasia, and the number 1 cause of euthanasia is behavior, and we're causing our own problem. So as veterinarians, we are not treating the number 1 cause of death for our patients. And to me, in that moment, that was unconscionable.
It is unconscionable. It's unconscionable. And what's also unconscionable to me, along with that, is another set of guidelines by the American Association of Feline Practitioners and the International Society of Feline Medicine was on house soiling behaviors. An excellent, Terry Curtis, great person. She was involved, Sarah Heath, lots of really good people writing that as well. And I think Hazel Carney was the lead on that one. And the one sort of sidebar there that was call out that really sticks with me, and I emphasize it again and again, is that every single visit, the most important question to ask is, does your cat ever urinate or defecate in your home somewhere else other than in the litter box? Because that needs to be addressed when it's, occasionally, but it's not a really big deal. If it happened every day, would it be a big deal? Well, yeah. So let's deal with that before it's a big deal. And what really I find unconscionable is that the shelters, which is the source of most of our pet cats, and God bless shelters, is their job is to find forever homes. And if we don't do our part as veterinarians and helping people care for cats in making sure we always discuss behavior and nutrition, okay, that we discuss those 2 critical things rather than just looking for medical type things, which often have to do with behavior, then or unmet behavioral needs, then those cats will be euthanized or sent back to the shelter. So we're not pulling our weight. The shelters are trying to find forever homes, and we aren't doing our job.
Margie, this is where I go ballistic, because we should have in every veterinary hospital in America and every shelter in America, well, not America and Canada and the world, what we call the behavior pharmacy. And why are we sedating away behaviors that we don't like and leaving cats in distress and not changing the world in ways that really are not hard? We're talking about just I think changing cat behavior is so easy.
Yes.
Changing dog behavior requires us to be different. That's hard. Changing cat behavior just means set up the environment differently.
We also do need to take into consideration, take into consideration also the way that we interact with our cats. We can't interact with them in a way that they, we have to respect I hadn't ever wanted to actually be a veterinarian. I've always wanted to do behavior, or ethology. So studying.
My computer's about to die. I'm going to get my cord. You keep talking.
Okay. So I wanted to do ethology, and ethology is the study of behavior, like Jane Goodall, like Diane Fossey, these people who just go out there and they observe and watch and see how people, or how a particular species or troop of monkeys or individuals behave, what is normal for them. And that is, that's always been my interest, because you have to know what normal is before you know what abnormal is. Steve just said that Decoding Your Cat by authors of the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists will be out this summer, but you can order ahead of time now already on Amazon. So yeah, so you can absolutely, it drives me nuts with, oh gosh, with when people use the retractable leashes in dogs. You need to teach your dog, just like you need to teach your kid to say please and thank you and look both ways before you cross the street. You need to respect and care for your dog enough to do the same thing, and your cat enough to do the same thing. That there are certain behaviors which, yes, cats aren't designed to live with us, but if we are going to have them live with us, then there are certain things. So, you can absolutely enable and reinforce certain behaviors.
Well, I think we are thinking about that topic in a way that doesn't serve us, because we're thinking about training and making sure they obey us. But
we don't want that.
I think what we owe them is reliable communication. Imagine how scary it would be to be living under the power of some other creature that you had no idea what they were talking about all the time. And they would get furious with you for reasons that did not seem consistent. So you don't know what to do ever. How scary would that be? I mean,
it's the fourth pillar. That's torture. That I think I believe is one of the definitions, international definitions of torture, is this unpredictability, and which sinks all the way back to what I said stress was. And there's a couple of really good resources. One is by Tony Buffington at cliniciansbrief.com that anybody can get, and it's called What Cat Owners Can Learn About Captivity.
Yeah.
Cat owners can learn about captivity. And in there, he also has a household resource checklist, which is a really good place to start. Also, there's the cat-friendly homes is a great place to start too for people, or cat-friendly practice, or cat-friendly clinic from the veterinary side of things. And additionally, the fear-free happy homes, fear-free clinic. The only concern I have there is you talked about using drugs to, drug your way out of things. I would rather change the clinic so that the cat doesn't have to feel afraid than numb the cat so that they aren't afraid and we can get our job done. To me,
it's a long way to go. I mean, I remember one of my favorite stories ever was when I first started working on my hunting feeder. Jane Brunt actually set me up on a phone call with Tony Buffington. And to me, that was like talking to Elvis. I was like so beside myself. And I got on the phone with him. And the first thing he said—
go outside, by the way.
What's that? His cats go outside?
Go outside, yeah.
The first thing he said to me was, listen, I have been trying to get people to do this for 35 years. What makes you think you're going to be any different?
Because
what I said to him was,
different time. He's laid the groundwork.
What's that?
He's laid the groundwork.
That's what I said, because I get to stand on your shoulders.
Exactly.
And you've done all the heavy lifting, and now I will die trying. That's what I told my family I want on my tombstone. She died trying. That it is building effort by effort from all these incredible people who are trying to really shift a whole paradigm. And it is a group of, you guys are the most amazing, brilliant, generous, kind people.
Yep.
It's amazing, and working so hard And I also think, particularly in this moment, in to bring it full circle, that understanding and being aware of the needs of someone who is not like you is a real skill. Number one, understanding they exist, caring enough to figure them out, and then providing for them is a real skill. And if you can teach a human being how to do that for a cat, maybe also that human being could do that for other human beings. And creating that sensitivity of not everyone's like you, and you don't have to be afraid that they're not like you, but you can grow and understand that through kindness and working with difference instead of against difference, you can have the world that you want.
International relations.
Interspecies.
We're talking about different cultural differences, and cats have cultural differences, very big cultural differences from us. Yeah.
And it's mostly interesting. And I'm still working on this stuff. So there's a lot of great people working on this stuff. I was talking to Kate Benjamin a few nights ago, and her site, House Panther, has so many beautiful cats.
Oh, beautiful.
Gorgeous. They look like something you'd find in the MoMA. And I have a wet feeder coming out. I just heard today it should be June 1st that my wet feeder will be getting here if it can get through customs. And I have 3 puzzles coming soon. And the thing I'm most excited about is my carrier, which will really change the entire paradigm of thinking about how you transport your cat. So all of this,
to have the cat know that it's a lovely place. You know, it still comes down to we need the tools. We need the litter boxes. We need the tools. We need these things. But people still have to understand why. It's so important for someone who comes from such a different, men are from men are from Mars, women are from Venus, whatever. Women are from Venus, men are from Mars. Cats are from who the hell knows where.
Even if
that's a good title for a book. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, cats are from who the fuck knows where.
I'll drink to that. But even if we can't help the people to understand, just put it in the environment. Read the instructions and put it in the environment, and your cat will
absolutely. That's gonna help. That's gonna help a great deal, because not everybody is wanting. It's always that 10% breakdown of people. 10% of your clients you absolutely adore. 80% are totally fine, and 10% you would poke your eyes out over. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So this is good. So I'm gonna give you these resources maybe to you post links to. That would be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one pager of the 5 pillars of environmental enrichment, arts and crafts projects, and where you can buy stuff.
Good.
Right now, I think we're going to be doing a lot of arts and crafts projects because our human resources are being put behind making sure that we get our food from Amazon and from the grocery stores. So you can use all those Amazon boxes, and if you're lucky enough to have toilet paper, you can use those rolls, and we can arts and crafts those things.
My goodness. We can do so many things with toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
In the long term, when we actually have to go back to work, you can buy cool, interesting things that will serve those needs.
But again, back to basics. We need to, cats don't need it to go whiz boom ba. They'd rather have it be something they can operate and that they can count on, and that's simple. So yeah.
I get asked so many times. I go to these trade shows. For those of you who've never had the pleasure of going to a pet products trade show, it's special.
Bells and whistles.
And I get asked all the time, does it move? Does it make noises? Does it have lights? And I think that what cats don't like is equally as important to what cats do like, and leaving out the scary stuff. Now, someday, I do think one that moved properly could be very interesting, but the technology is so expensive to get it to work properly that no one would buy it. And I wouldn't start with that either. And that's controlling the human is so hard. Start with the easy one and then like staging it. People don't like that. People like to have, you know, the rocket ship straight out of the driveway.
Well, and you know, and talking about, you know, controlling the human, and you know, circling back to the, it's not about social distancing, it's about physical distancing. You know, stay at home, wash your frickin' hands to keep others healthy. We'll get through this, and each one of us, each of you, is important. You know, so don't despair.
We will get through it. And I think maybe you could post on here too that beautiful video you sent me earlier. That
yes, well, you could link that into the, it is a beautiful video about thank you, coronavirus, for, you know, gratitude for the fact that it is a huge wake-up call for how we've gone off, over the top, off the edge, whatever, you know, it's just like, whoa.
My dear sweet friend who inspired a lot of my choices, Dr. Teresa Garofalo, who passed away, taught me through her illness that there is beauty in all. Oh, what a beautiful example of elbow sneezing.
Thank you.
She taught me there is beauty in all things, even in terrible things. There is beauty, and in this, another beautiful example.
Thank you.
In this terrible moment.
Yeah.
Where people are losing their lives. And I have to put in here that I am, if you read my personal Facebook page, you will see plenty of it, in awe of the veterinarians and the doctors and the nurses and the hospital staff who knowingly are putting themselves at risk of dying to help other people. It is, this moment in time is just mind-boggling in so many ways, but there is beauty in it, and there are lessons to be taken away from it, that hopefully strong leaders, we need leadership to harness the goodness of this experience and have that be the catalyst to a better tomorrow, and to step away from the things that are harming us. And you know what, Margie, I've been having this conversation for the past couple of years. I want the economy of goodness. Mm-hmm. I think we've had this trajectory where if you do good, you should do it for free. And that means that all the do-gooders are broke, and money is power. So the people who have the money and the power tend to be less do-gooders. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And if we understood the value,
thank goodness for you know, Bill Gates is an example of the other. You know, he's amazing, and you know, there are a lot of people who are philanthropists and who are amazing people, but unfortunately, that's not the majority. The majority looks at, you know, we could get philosophical about this and go on forever, but it's we should probably just do that privately. But going on with you know, that this whole, and it has forever been thus, that power is based on greed, and greed is based on fear. Fear of that somebody else will have take something away from you. Therefore, greed. That you know, need more. Therefore, you know, wars. I mean, what are wars about? You know, how often are they about human rights? How often are they about taking care of people? This universe provides plenty. There is more than enough, and that's one of the things you and I are going to be, you know, working on, is trying to look at in a back to basics way, is look at enough. What is not enough, but what is enough? You know, really need that. Like, wait, is satisfaction and gratitude with enough? Instead of, ooh, you know, he's got that, I want that. Oh, look, 3 for the price of 1, I want that. You know, it's just like,
you know, and we will talk about it privately, but I was watching the Marie Kondo stuff, thinking about it in the culture that we've created. People are literally drowning in stuff.
Yes.
That not only is ruining their physical lives, but
it sucks energy, and all this stuff. Then like we're seeing the trickle down effect with coronavirus, or not specifically coronavirus, but specifically COVID-19, the disease caused by coronavirus, in that if somebody somebody gets sick, then they can't work. If they can't work, then the business closes. If the business closes, then everybody that, like, so the gym closes. That means that the trainers and all of the staff are out of work, which means then that I can't go in and work out, which means my health deteriorates, which blah, blah, blah. It's the trickle down is phenomenal all the way through these things. But you can also get positive trickle down as well, and that's what we're desperately needing.
So I think in closing, I hope that in addition to, I'm not discounting the horror that is happening right now, because that is undeniable. But we use this Mother Nature giving us this enforced time out to refocus. And I hope that we inspire other people or anybody who's watching this to think about how they can be a leader going forward, because we're going to need leadership in positive ways. We can use this time out as a hard reset, and
pressure will create diamonds, and let these diamonds shine. But believe in yourselves throughout this whole this massive meltdown and burnout.
So, and you guys can always communicate through Facebook too with us, but when you're feeling terrible because you're all locked up and all the bad things, try to reharness that energy and figure out what you can do to start making a trajectory for kindness and leadership going forward. So on that note, I hope I get to talk to you for 2 hours every single night. Thank you so much. And thanks for changing my whole life.
Hey. You're an inspiration. So,
thank you. Thank you. We'll do it. Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Cheers. Good night.
Cheers.
Good night.
I can't use it.